counting. So the basis of the opinion was that there were no material misstatements found. All reports figures reflect actual cash activity accurately and without misrepresentation. The cash basis of accounting, which records transactions when cash is received or paid, is appropriate for the court's financial reporting purposes as defined under the note in the actual report. While internal controls were reviewed, no opinion was expressed on their effectiveness. Our focus was on designing procedures that would identify any financial misstatements. So no findings of fraud, collusion, or significant error were detected, so that's great. Compliance and internal controls as required by the governing auditing standards. We also performed testing related to internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. Our supplemental report issued December 4th, 2024 found no material weaknesses or instances of non-compliance that would impact the court's financial statements. And in conclusion, the audit reflects the continued professionalism of Judge Kapora's office and staff in 030206, and the Controller's Office appreciates their cooperation during the auditing process, and the findings demonstrate strong fiscal stewardship in line with public expectations for transparency and accountability. And this audit was completed by our newly upgraded lead auditor, Gada Gurgis, and it was signed by myself. Next, we move on to the review of the jail, commissary, and inmate telephone services. This is for the auditing period April 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2024. And the purpose of the review is it was conducted as an agreed-upon procedure, engagement requested by the Director of Corrections to ensure compliance with Title 37 in the Pennsylvania Code. The review focused on the financial and administrative handling of the jail commissary and inmate telephone services during that specified 6-month period. And we had our key findings. First, we looked to determine if inmates are being charged the correct amount for items purchased from the commissary. And we determined that the inmates were charged correctly for all items they purchased from the commissary. And the item pricing was consistent with the approved Keefe price list, and that is the name of the commissary, the person who runs it. Not the person, but the company, Keefe. And all 30 receipts were tested, and they matched the commissary history report, and no discrepancies were found. Next, we determined if inmates are signing their order slips and acknowledging the receipt of what they ordered. So that's the receipt signatures. So out of 30 sample receipts, 28 were found signed by inmates and acknowledging the receipt of their orders, and 2 were found not to be located by Keefe staff, so the signature confirmation couldn't be found or verified for those orders. Grievance handling. So the procedure was to determine for grievance resolution efforts by Keefe and how they're monitored by jail personnel. So the grievances related to commissary services, typically credit or refund issues, were addressed promptly by the on-site Keefe employees, and jail management is informed of grievances, and our refund testing revealed no errors or concerns. In reference to telephone services, the procedure was to determine if rates charged by Global Tellink for inmate telephone calls are in line with FCC guidelines. So the inmates are being charged 16 cents per minute for calls made through Global Tellink, GTL, which is in full compliance with the 2024 FCC guidelines. So in conclusion, the results of the engagement indicate that adherence to policies and pricing guidelines for both commissary and telephone services were in line. While 2 missing receipts were noted, no significant concerns or irregularities were identified, and the Department of Corrections and its vendors appear to be managing these services in a compliant and responsible manner. The audit was completed by our new newly appointed lead auditor, Amna Essen, and it was signed by myself. The final audit that I'll be presenting today is the cash collection process for the Human Resources Division. That auditing date is as of September 30th, 2024. And this review was performed as an agreed-upon procedure engagement requested by the County Executive, Lamont McClure, to evaluate the Human Resources Division's cash handling process and internal controls. So the findings there, in the first procedure, we reviewed cash collection work assignments to determine if a proper segregation of duties was in place, and we found that the audit found weaknesses in internal control over cash collections. Specifically, deposits are not reviewed or signed off by someone other than the person who prepares and submits the deposit. This lack of review was evident as receipts were not dated or initialed by a second party. Next, we looked at we selected a sample of 5 receipts and verified that they were deposited on the same day and as required, as received, and that the cash/check agreed to the validation deposit slip. So for those 5 sampled transactions, the breakdown of cash and check totals were accurate, and they matched the revenue register receipts. However, documentation was insufficient to verify deposit timing for 3 out of 5 receipts, and in 2 cases, deposits were not made on the same day that cash was received. The funds collected for wellness events are held by a committee member until the event sign-up ends, at which point they are submitted for deposit and reconciliation. While reconciliations are being performed, the process could delay timely deposits. So then we looked at the bank account oversights for the office with their bank accounts, and the Department of Human Resources does not maintain or operate any separate bank accounts, so no findings were applicable under this review area. So in conclusion, while there are some basic accounting practices being followed accurately, there is a clear need for improved oversight and internal controls in the human resources cash handling procedures. Specific attention should be given to implementing a proper review process and ensuring timely deposits. Strengthening these practices will help safeguard the county's assets. And so this was completed by Florina Tang, our Auditor 1, and signed by myself. And that's it. Thank you for your time. If you have no questions.
Any questions for the controller on any of the audits? No? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, this ends my report then.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is a review of the Administrative Code Article 13 contract resolutions for two-way communications, EMS Eventide Next Generation Voice Logging Recorder System, and two-way communications EMS Novus Dispatch Console upgrade. Mr. Weaver.
Good evening, Commissioners. The first one that you have there before you tonight is the refresh and replacement of our logging recorder. Again, these funds are from the State Interconnectivity Fund. It's a shared project with Lehigh. We'll be replacing our logging recorder, which was put in 2019, 2020. And part of that is also to increase the capacity of doing screen records that we already do, but adding just because of the data amount, and the technology is changing. And the second one, I know it sounds fancy, Zetron, but this is our radio console system. Again, this is paid for out of the State Interconnectivity Fund for grants that we applied and did receive. This is the actual computer system that basically the dispatchers click the button or the screen and it causes the radio to transmit, and that's how we communicate. It is a shared project with Lehigh County. We're the lead fiduciary on that. And we run an A and a B side, and all of that back room equipment and dispatcher equipment gets replaced. That, again, was installed during the time of consolidation and is due for a refresh and an update. Okay.
Any questions for Todd on either of these contract resolutions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda then is a review of the fourth quarter unaudited financial statements. Yeah, I believe there's a copy of the unaudited excuse me. The unaudited financial statements in your packet. I put this on the agenda. Anybody have any questions before we begin? Okay. Questions some things I want to point out, and then just some clarifications I'm looking for. On the cover sheet, there's an updated cover sheet, page 1, dated 4/9/25, that came through with the packet. At the bottom of that sheet, you see the 2024 fund balance by category. Signed, these are monies that are committed to other uses. To balance the 2025 budget, there was $22,024,169 required to balance the 2025 budget, so those monies have been committed out of the total $33,21 available. There's $3.952,483 remaining on ARP projects. Those monies are committed. The unassigned monies are the financial stabilization of $7,841,786. That's what's left after the monies were used in the budgeting process. I think it was $11.8 million was taken out of that financial stabilization, down from the 19. Now there's left the $7.8 million for that. And then other, and this would be whatever monies are left, at $3,432. So essentially, we have $3,432 of unassigned monies that the county can use on items that come up that would not allow us to draw upon the financial stabilization monies going forward. I happen to believe that that's a challenging number, to say the least. Basically, we have zero cash available, assuming everything goes by budget, which never does. Exactly, if there anything were to come from outside the area. But we don't have anything in the general fund, so the general fund essentially, for free money, is ostensibly zero. Next, any questions on that? Go ahead, Mr. Goffredo.
I guess what would be the $20 million difference in the investments? How do we miscalculate that so severely? Anybody, Mr. Barron, or anybody from the administration?
I haven't looked at this information, but I caution you from drawing any conclusions to the quarterly financial statements that you see in front of you. County Council is going to be getting a full report on what the actual numbers are. The key word in that cover sheet is unaudited. So there is money that actually came in that will be accounted for in 2024 that was done before we closed out the books. We make payments from 2024 and accept revenues from 2024 well into February. That is the snapshot of the end of the year before all those audit adjustments are made. So I don't want to comment on any of the numbers in that report until we actually see what the audited financial statements are going to be. It also, we are closing out the first quarter of this year. It's already closed out. We'll have those statements to you, I would imagine, in a week or so. I didn't check. Mary Alice was out today. I did not check to see exactly what date they would be available. However, again, that first quarter statement, the second quarter is probably the most accurate that we do, because at that point then all the adjustments are made. And that second quarter kind of gives you the snapshot with a good portion of the discounted revenues in. So that's really a good benchmark as to where we are for the year, and we utilize that as we begin to plan the budgeting for 2026 and the capital project 5-year plan that we put together every year.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But Mr. Barron, this is a financial statement published by your department, correct? Unaudited or not?
It's a report that is pulled out of the system that shows the quarterly statements.
Sure.
Unaudited, those numbers could move millions of dollars with regard to the audit adjustments. I don't know if Mr. Rinsky is still here, but I had the county's financial statement when I was controller actually restated to the tune of $15 million because of an accrual. So it is very difficult to draw any conclusions from any of those numbers.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to page 2, the general fund. Just would like to point out just a few trends that I see in the numbers, all things Mr. Barron just acknowledged. First, under the intergovernmental, you can see that if you look at under revenues intergovernmental, that'd be the second line down. The prior actual was $40,179,221. The actual current, which would be the end of 2024, was $5,743,759. That's approximately a $35 million swing in intergovernmental monies. You can see the impact that had on the revenues. Question I had, and I didn't have a chance to research this, under the expenditures under council, we had a current budget in '24 of $19,475,543. I didn't have a chance to research what the $19 million under council is. You can see the actual amount was $747,513, and the prior actual was $728,376. So, Mr. Barron?
Council?
It's under council, yeah.
All right, so first of all, I didn't pick up on this, but the fact that we don't have any money, right now in our crim accounts, we have about $70 million. Some of that is encumbered, but there is about $15 or $16 million that is unencumbered monies.
What is the CREM account?
You should know that, Mr. Brown. You were the county executive.
I'm
The
asking
CRIM
the
account.
question
No, that's
for
okay.
clarification
The
for the
CRIM
taxpayers
account.
that are watching this recording at home.
The CRIM account is actually a government account that it holds our money. It gains a little bit better than what your standard CD interest would be. The state government, along with the federal government, has qualified plans that we are allowed to invest in that's guaranteed return on your investments for high dollar investors. It allows us to gain interest. Sometimes they do very well. In this economy, they do excellent. And so we have money in those accounts. Now, to answer your question, monies that go and interest that's accrued from the Emergency Stabilization Fund. The Emergency Stabilization Fund, since it was created by County Council at the time of Mr. Brown's administration, we had a discussion as the controller and the fiscal department as to where to put that money. And it resides in County Council's budget because it's governed by a specific ordinance passed by Northampton County Council. So that money sits in the council's budget. It is not a budget that the president of council proposes each year. It just sits there as the emergency stabilization because there are certain actions required by Northampton County Council to actually spend that money. So that's why you'll see money that goes in and out of there. It's just interest that's credited, things that are moved around. And again, we put less money in there because the county executive has said we're not to overtax the residents. We utilize some of that money, and we have the required ordinance amount in that fund. And then when council passed their budget, that is what we had put in. So council passed the budget with that amount. I don't know if any of that money moved or the interest moved in any of that money, and that it was picked up and captured in 2024 or in 2024. But again, that's unaudited. There might be some entries that will be cleaned up in the external audit by the auditors. that aren't considered material from a level of materiality. I just don't know what those are at this point. They're still working on all that.
Baron, why would that be captured? I understand where you're pointing. Why is that captured as expenditures?
Well, it depends on if there is an offsetting. So it could be that it was miscategorized somewhere, that it shows it as an expenditure. There could be some sort of offsetting expenditure where that revenue was brought into to balance things out. Again, without looking at the detail or being able to drill down into the report, I can't really tell you at this point. And again, that's unaudited, so I don't know.
And for your comment about the current accounts, what monies go into that particular account?
It's a cash flow model that we use. The cash flow model is basically determinative of what monies we get in. We get a lot of money in from mortgage companies in large lump sums from people. Mortgage companies pay within the discount period, so they take advantage of that 2% discount we offer. The discount period is now over. So what we do is when we have that money that comes in, and a large portion of our money comes in now, we hold on to that money, we balance it out throughout the year. Also, if we get state money in that comes in that is not to be spent for the second half of the year, every night Fulton Financial will pull money out of our account to meet the FDIC requirements to keep our money safe. They'll put it in the CRIM account and then move it back. There's a whole process that goes along with that every night that Fulton Financial does for government services. So that's kind of how that all works in conjunction with one another. But it's a big cash flow model.
But the 70, you mentioned that currently you have approximately 70 million in there. So
I
the
think
county
that's what it
has-
was,
has
yeah.
money. But that 70 million is included as part of the tax revenue coming into the county for the most part, which is accounted for in your 2025 budget.
Some of it is, but you'll remember for the 2025 budget, the money that we have that's reflected in that quarterly financial statement only represents half of the state allocation. So some of the money we have not received yet, or we have not made the budget amendment that we will make later on this year to talk about what the second half of 2025 looks like. We really don't know what that's going to be. So the budget changes very, very drastically from what you passed at the end of 2024 once we get the state allocations for the block grant. And I anticipate this year, based on all of the stuff going on in the federal government and what those block grants are going to look like, I haven't seen what the state budget's going to be, and they've just started. Apparently those conversations with the governor, the two caucuses in the House and the Senate, have started those discussions. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I imagine this year you're going to see a lot of difference from what we passed as the priorities get picked up based on the money that is passed from the federal government to the state, then down to the county. That's my
Yeah,
anticipation.
but what does that have to do with the CRUM account currently and the fact that the 2025 budget passed, you're using 22 million of the general fund to do that? These are all monies that have been accounted for in one level or another in the budgeting conversation. I recognize the change that is occurring, and absolutely I agree with you, Mr. Barron, that with the changes going on at the federal government, we don't know what we'll be able to collect that you may have anticipated in the budget. But that has nothing to do with this current document that we're speaking about, does it?
I'm very hesitant to make any comments or pronouncements because I will not use any number in that document you're speaking of to formulate an opinion on where we go for the proposal of the 2026 budget. What I will use is actually the audit that Mayor Dussel will produce for us to start those numbers and to make those decisions based on what we have left, where we are going to go, and then whatever the state budget looks like. Because we have that 20% to kick in from the full amount. So I really, that particular document, because it's unaudited, I don't want to make any predictions on it or where things are going to go because, like I said, audit adjustments, whether they're material or immaterial, tend to change things very, very quickly.
But this, I recognize the unaudited nature of that, but the unaudited nature is the 2024 budget and actual. The prior actual, though, those numbers would be audited that are included in this document, correct?
That's the starting point, yes.
That's the starting point. Okay,
Yes.
great, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate the clarification on that.
Yes. And when I say starting point, I mean 1/1 of 2024.
Right.
So 18 months, well,
Yeah,
15
the
months
beginning,
ago.
January 1 of '24 is what
Yeah.
that number would be.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barron. Then I want to jump over to, Gracedale was the topic of conversation amongst council. We had concerns about the $5 million that we're going to, that was supposed to go to support pay, state bonuses, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to take a look at this. So if you turn to page 30, this is, again, to Mr. Barron's point, this is the unaudited Gracedale budget. And just a couple of things to point out. The prior actual revenue for Gracedale, this would be 2023's actual, was $88,285,924. The current actual unaudited number is $82,910 and $540. That's a difference of about $5.3 million in decreased revenue going in, at the end of 2024. The item that jumped out at me, if you go about halfway down, you see program operating cost. The prior actual operating cost for Gracedale was $48,208,270. The current 2024 actual is $23,759,847 overall. That's a difference of just shy of $25 million. I don't know what would have, what that was really pointing to, why such a drop in the operating side, program operating costs on that.
So you really can't rely on Gracedale's numbers in this quarterly report, and here's why. There are lots of receivables that are gotten at the end of the year, okay, from the federal government, and I'm talking about Medicare and Medicaid money. Now, as we know, in the beginning of the year, some Medicaid and Medicare money was initially frozen. We also have a high level of receivables from the federal government. The census changed at Gracedale drastically. It was down in the beginning of the year. It went up. Ms. Wondolowski can answer those census questions. But until all of that information is reconciled as to what year we account for the money in, because Northampton County and the way the county executive and myself have really looked at Gracedale with Ms. Wondolowski is we look at Gracedale on sort of a rolling 18-month period, okay? And that 18-month period, we have to look at what receivables we have when that money is coming in and balance it out to make sure that we have enough money to pay all our bills. To be clear, Gracedale has the money. We pay all of our bills. We balance those receivables very carefully. You know, we were under budget from what we understand in agency nursing this past year. We've worked very diligently to keep the programs up for the residents of Gracedale. Ms. Wondolowski can talk about that. But we're happy because our population is going up. The big issue with that, though, is we're still providing the services today to those residents, right? And if our population is going up and Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements are slowing, we're providing services and getting paid slower for that amount. The other thing in the 2025 budget, which I think is a pleasant surprise, is we budgeted approximately $8 million more in expenses than we needed because the IGT, to get the revenue back out of it, is going to cost us less money. And so those are the kinds of push-pull you see in a quarterly statement when it's not audited that is going to throw a lot of those numbers off for Gracedale. And, you know, when we get the IGT payments that come in, because now it's done on a monthly basis, whether we're getting that money, you know, in enough time to be able to credit it to 2024 when we technically received the money, or whether we get it and have to account for it in 2025 is going to be the issue. You'll hear a lot about that when we go over the external audit with your auditors. Primarily because the IGT also changed, as you might be aware, late 2023, early 2024. It went from that rolling 18-month period to a 12-month period, and that kind of threw a lot of the accounting mechanisms out of whack. But we have a lot of receivables out there right now, and they're starting to slowly come in, which is nice, and our population is up. So as that population stays high, the receivables continue to come in, we continue to make more and more money to be able to offset our bills, which is a good thing.
Baron, what rolls up into the program operating costs? What rolls into that?
Everything. From activities, therapy,
All right, so it's a catch-all for a
it's a
lot of these.
catch-all, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But staying with that thought, following the prior actual, which it audited, then the excess or deficiency of revenues over expenditures in 2023 was $27,803,007. So the facility took an operating loss, $27 million. There was in the budget, I went back to because I didn't understand where the monies came from. I went back to the annual comprehensive financial report that ended December 31st, 2023. This was provided to County Council September 24th of 2024, so this won't come out for 24 until September. There was other financing sources transfer in. There was $11,220,290 in the budget transfer in to Gracedale. The question I have is the actual amount that was transferred in was $14,940,640, a difference of $3,720,000 and $3,720,350. Where did the other money come in? Because it wasn't budgeted for. You moved the $11 million to balance that. Where did the other $3.7 million come from?
The money that went into Gracedale was money from ARP funds that the county received for Gracedale. ARP monies did go in there, moved over there at the end of, I believe, 2023. We get grant money, and money has actually moved out of Gracedale as well. We had budgeted for the daycare, so there was some monies that moved back and forth between Gracedale related to the daycare. So if Gracedale incurred a bill for the daycare that sat in the general fund, we moved that money over. Every now and again, we do have, and I'd have to look at $3 million. It could be adjusted out. I don't know if something was in the general fund, coded to the general fund, that initially should have been coded to Gracedale. That will, again, wash itself out in the audit. So again, I don't know what that $3 million is.
I'm quoting, just for clarity, this is the audited 2023 performance.
The 2023 performance?
Sir, this is out of the comprehensive annual.
Well, you'll remember between 2023 and 2024, we did have money that council allocated to Gracedale. We moved all of that money over to Gracedale in 2024 to make that final move over. A lot of that money sat in the crim account and in the general fund because ARP money came into the general fund first and then got moved over. So it was moved over in phases.
Well, let me just continue the thought then while you're on that track, because you're showing the loss was 27.8 million. Even if you accrue the 14.9, that left $12,862,367 of fund balance, which was on the books, that you used then to wipe out that operating loss.
You also have to
That
remember,
you basically drained the fund balance account for Gracedale to compensate for the shortness of revenue versus expenditures or loss.
well, so again, you'll have to remember you're looking at that over a rolling 18-month period. So while the funds are lower in 2025, we did budget $8 million more than we had anticipated for IGT payments. We also had increases in the census at the end of 2025, or 2024.
This is 2023 numbers.
I understand, but you're utilizing 2023 numbers, like the basis number, to try to make a determination on what happened in 2024 when the books are not audited and not closed, from, if I'm understanding your question correctly. So what I'm telling you is that story will be told in your 2024 audit. And what you will notice is that while the funds are down now, we said it's a rolling 18-month period. When you go from an 18-month period on the IGT to the 12-month period, there is going to be a situation where you're going to have lower income coming in because of the payments to the IGT were higher from the county, and we did not get the expected revenue back. However, to make that up, and the accountant at Gracedale, Larry Erickson, can explain a lot of that IGT to you. But one of the things that happened is now in 2025, we will be paying less money, and we will have I would say, a modest fund balance at Gracedale, because as long as things hold, knock on wood, because we are going to be paying less money out to the intergovernmental transfer and getting a lot more back.
Okay, so if I'm following your logic, then you're communicating that the year-end 2023, which you used an additional $3,720,350, came from within the Gracedale what? Because
There was a
zeroed out,
Gracedale had a fund balance 2023.
but you consumed
To
that
start
full
2024.
fund balance plus the transfer in. So this is, the 3.7 million is above and beyond both of those numbers.
That, again, you have to see where the audit comes out. I don't have that as part of the calculation. That is not what I see. But again,
This is the official comprehensive annual financial report that was delivered to council September 2024. So I assume the numbers for 2023 went through the audit process, have been
Yes.
audited, are published as audited,
Correct.
corrected numbers, correct?
yes, and we had.
Make sure I'm on the same
Yeah,
page
yeah,
with
that's
you.
fine. But the other thing you're looking at for 2023, it was published, it was correct. You're actually trying to take what's going on in 2024, applying it to what you see in the quarterly financial statement to come up with something for 2024. And again, it's like taking numbers that are known, December 31st of 2023, taking a specific scenario for 2024 that we don't know is going to happen because it's not audited, and then mashing it into 2023. I can't do that
Well,
until.
actually, I'm asking for, right now, I'm focused on 2023's clarification because I see $3.7 million that was used to move into Gracedale. I don't know where the money came from. I don't know who authorized $3.7 million to be moved into Gracedale to balance that loss overall. And you, as the director of finance, are telling me you're not.
The 3 points, if you're talking about $3.7 million, again, ARP money was always sitting in the county general fund, and we moved lots of ARP money back and forth. So, I mean, I could research that for you specifically on the $3.7 million, but again, I think what you're trying to do is understand the 2023 statements in light of what's going on in 2024, and wait till your audit is finished, and you will see where Gracedale is. We look at Gracedale on a rolling 18-month period.
Well, then, Mr. Gafredo, you have.
I'm gonna just at least ask the question that I think staring me in the face. Could any of that money came from the money that we set aside for bonuses?
For bonuses, you have an audit. I don't want to get out in front of an audit. Let Ms. Zirinsky look at that for you. I do not know the answer to
You
that
don't know
question.
the answer?
Can't answer that question.
All right, then, I will go to, then back to the unaudited 2024. Following the same logic, Gracedale, when you look at page 30 of the unaudited financials for 2024, is showing a deficit or an operating loss of $8,518,993. There is no budget line item for transfer in as it was in 2023. In 2023, we had 11.2 million budgeted for transfer in. There is zero budget in 2024 for transfer in, and yet there was miraculously 8 million made it into the transfer in line, which balanced it out. There was no Gracedale fund balance available as it was in 2023 to help offset that. So you didn't have a fund balance, and you didn't have a budgeted transfer in. So where did the 8.5 million come from?
So when you're talking about the 8.5 million, in 2023, Northampton County Council authorized approximately 13 million to go over to Gracedale. We moved that over slowly, primarily because it sat in the general fund. We moved it over slowly. Now, we have a large receivable at Gracedale of approximately $5 million. And going back to that 18-month time frame, in 2025, we have an additional $8 million of expenditures budgeted for that we don't believe will come to fruition, on top of the fact that we have current receivables out there for residents at Gracedale. So until I have that $8 million, I had thought when we had presented the budget, it was sitting at about $4 million. And I told you all at that time to be patient and wait till the year-end audit, because we have to present a balanced budget. That's what I have to do. That's what the Home Rule Charter says I must do. And I presented that budget to you with the best numbers that I had. At that point, we looked at what our receivables were, when those receivables were going to come in, and ultimately what will happen is all of those numbers will get adjusted and balanced out. There are also transfers that come into Gracedale that are part of those ins and outs of Gracedale that have to do with healthcare. So employee healthcare goes in and out of Gracedale quite a bit. So if there's for example, someone at Gracedale has a catastrophic medical situation and we get paid out by stop loss, money will go in that way. We have extravagant workers' comp claim. That money for Gracedale, while it is a Gracedale employee, that money sits in the general fund. So we will move that money over from time to time. Because remember, County Council has that ordinance that says Gracedale is a one-way street. Once the money goes in, we cannot pull the money back out. Okay, there's an ordinance that when the home was about to be sold. One of the things my fiscal staff is very, very careful about is making sure we only put money into Gracedale when we know there is going to be a bill that may sit in the general fund. So while Gracedale is its own separate and distinct entity, and we try to do the best we can with understanding what those needs for employees and stuff like that are going to be from time to time, and when we know about amendments, we bring them to the county council. But what ends up happening from time to time is we have money that needs to go in, we book large receivables, those types of things happen. So I caution you in 2024 to wait until all those numbers are in. Because that particular number, that $8.5 million, has fluctuated from 3 to 10 to 7 to 8 to 6, depending on where we're counting things. Because with Gracedale, we are not on a cash basis, we're on the modified accrual. and that's sort of a mix of cash basis accounting versus we pay our bills on a cash basis. We have the cash, we pay it. But our revenue, we book them in a specific way because remember, the county as a whole entity, not just Gracedale, as a whole entity, we have 3 different years we work on. We have the state fiscal year, we have the federal government calendar year, which is October 1 to September 30, and then our year. So I don't know where that number is going to come out, and I don't know what receivables and things will be booked and how those things will be booked, but you will see that in your year-end audit.
But the question I have is, I get the receivables, and if they get booked, they go back. If not, they get carried on the balance sheet forward. That is not what I see here. I understand it has to be audited. But somebody authorized $8.5 million to be transferred into Gracedale from somewhere. I don't recall this body seeing an amendment that included, amongst other transfers that you're talking about, to do this. And this is now a published, unaudited financial statement saying, hey, we don't know, it could be 8 million, it could be 4 million, it may not be more, everything you're talking about. But this is still a financial statement from your department to this body that is misleading or inaccurate, is what you're saying.
Not misleading or inaccurate, it's unaudited because of the nature of Gracedale.
Okay, so who authorized the 8.5 million to be moved into this account so that you could close it out? Somebody had to authorize money to be balanced here, correct? It'll be audited and rebalanced and reset, I understand that based on the audit we're due.
You need
But we're looking at this number as of the end of December.
And that number is on paper, unaudited. It is not a real number. It's unaudited. Until we have an audited financial statement, you're actually taking a number and saying somebody authorized something somewhere that is, it's not an audited number. It is not a number that is, again, it has changed. We have receivables that come in and out. And Gracedale is very much a moving target with regard to reimbursements and money that we get. Now, we might actually have higher revenues in 2025 that come in, depending on where we have to book this money. So you need to wait.
We're not talking about 2025. I'm talking about a pattern that there's 3.7 million in 23. Don't know where it came from. You can't tell me. And then in 2024, unaudited, that 23 is an audited number, 2024 unaudited, but now it's 8.5 million that showed up. We don't know where it came from. I understand all the in and outs and all of that, Steve, I really do. I appreciate the difficulty of accounting for the revenues coming into Gracedale for all the reasons you just said. However, this number is published. Is saying that Gracedale had 8.5 million transferred in. It says total other financing transfer in. You used it budgeted in 2023, 11.2 million. You used that. I understand that. But there was $0 in the transfer in for 2024. You had no fund balance that you could use to offset the operating losses because you'd spent all of that in 2023. So I want to understand who authorized the 8.5 million?
And again, this is an unaudited financial statement. It is an unaudited quarterly statement. It's the reason I don't put it on the website anymore, because those numbers change so wildly between when that is made and the actual audit that takes place. That document captures a snapshot in time and our best guess at where we're going to end up. It's a snapshot in time, and I could pick a different snapshot in time if you like, but that's just a snapshot in time.
Steve, what would miscellaneous employee benefits encapsulate?
Oh, geez. It could be reimbursement expenses for a nursing license. It could be if there's a uniform allowance there. What line item are you specifically talking about?
I'm looking at the current budget had miscellaneous employee benefits at $2.68 million.
Is that just in general for the current budget, or are you talking just Gracedale in general?
This is just Gracedale.
Just Gracedale? So it
Miscellaneous
could
employee
be,
benefit of $2.68 million.
it could be anything from licensing, it could be
bonuses?
longevity pay, because, so we try to budget at Gracedale and in all of our departments. We try to budget longevity pay, assuming that the person will make it through their longevity date. So, and that's paid at a different rate depending upon how long the person's been here. So chances are in that particular line item, we usually over budget in that area because we're looking for a person who's going to be staying for that through that time period and entitled to that benefit, whatever it
You
is.
budgeted $2.68 million, but we only spent $35,000.
That could potentially be the case. Gracedale has had a lot of agency nurses. There's been a lot of turnover. We also
1%. Then that's where I guess
and
it's really
that
hard to
could-
do our jobs as far as budgeting goes and answering questions that are brought to us when we're being told from 2023 that we can't go off of these numbers. We're seeing millions of dollars that are getting funneled in, and I
you're
understand.
you're talking the unaudited statement. So there are some things that might have gotten booked elsewhere. So it might have gotten booked under a salary
This is
line
an
item.
expenditure. I can understand you not
Oh, no.
knowing fully realized
Yeah.
revenue, but you know what you spent
Well,
for 2024.
so hold on now. For an expenditure like that, so we have 2.3 budgeted for miscellaneous employee expenses. So sometimes when we book a payroll, if we don't book it correctly, whatever the case may be, we have money in the payroll. That's like a pooled expense amount. What will happen in the audit is that money will be taken from the pooled salary line item and put back into that miscellaneous expense. So while that line item you're looking at in an unaudited financial statement, you want to look at the whole pool of the expenses for employees. So you want to look at all the salaries,
And
all
everything's
the
pretty
fringe benefits.
consistent. You're spending about
Correct.
66% because I'm assuming you maybe lost some full-time employees, your salaries are lower, maybe it was a number of things, but that's an anomaly. That's 99% off.
It absolutely
Kind of
is.
a pretty big line item.
It absolutely is, and I understand that. But again, those are the kinds of things that get captured in an audit if something is not put in the right place. Or when we're doing payroll, a specific pay code, for whatever reason that may be, that specific pay code does not calculate in and pull from that budget line item within the ERP system. And that's why we have external auditors. Because I would present a budget to you then that didn't have that number being so high. I would move it where it rightfully belonged and then explain it on a page in the budget book.
I'll end my time on this meeting by saying, I understand this isn't audited. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but at the same time, it feels like we're not being told the whole story. It feels like we're losing a lot of cash out of Gracedale, and we're not being told that, and we're being told everything is fine. And I'm concerned because this could be a bigger problem than we are being led to believe. And if we hear employees aren't getting bonuses, and all of a sudden I see miscellaneous employee benefits budgeted $2.6 million, we spent $35,000, and we're getting millions of dollars from we don't know where, it's pretty easy to draw conclusions without an audit. So I want to give you the opportunity to come to us and say, hey, this is what's happening. Let me look into it. I'll tell you what's happening.
If I don't have money to pay a bill, I come to county council. If I have an issue with something,
I
come to
understand
county
we
council.
gave a lot of ARP money to Gracedale. I want to make sure it was used the way we said it would be used.
I understand that, and again, your audit will flesh that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Ron.
This is for Steve. When I was director, we didn't have the money. If Gracedale got extra money, it was used to plug holes all over the county budget. But I know since then, since I left, that changed where any funds coming in, they have to go to Gracedale. If it's from Gracedale, it goes to Gracedale. The question I have is, the money goes into if it's not needed right away, it goes into the general fund. Specifically, I forgot, is there a specific line item in the general fund that says this is Gracedale money that must be used for Gracedale? It's just not being used at this time.
All revenue, Mr. Heckman, that is Gracedale's in the budget goes directly into Gracedale and their revenue line items. Expenditures for Gracedale, we do add those in to the best of our ability. From time to time, what ends up happening is you have those things like a gift that will come to the county of Northampton for Gracedale. We accept it into the general fund, we do transfer it in. Our hope is that we're able to transfer it in a way that doesn't show it as a county contribution. Gracedale, as you said, is a one-way street, and the ordinance, while I think it's super important that Gracedale isn't utilized when it does have money, like it had, money previously, that it doesn't get robbed or raided to plug up holes in the general fund if there are any, which we did not have any. The challenges that Gracedale faced with regard to, picking up the county when it was making money, with this ordinance, it does have a reverse effect, where sometimes we get money in the county's general fund that we do have to transfer over to Gracedale. We're also very careful that we know it's a one-way street. We're also very careful in fiscal that we don't transfer too much money to Gracedale, because we know it is that one-way street. So that also presents, a challenge the way that they had the challenge prior to this ordinance. So again, things are changing very, very rapidly in the fiscal environment at Gracedale. We are soaring with census right now. People want to come to Gracedale, which is a good thing. But a unique challenge to a great census right now is the uncertainty within the federal government with Medicare and Medicaid funding, and when we are going to get that money. So again, we have a great population, we have a great census and great people there. The problem is I'm providing those services today with the promise to get paid here tomorrow. And so we balance that out. If I do have a problem where I need a county contribution, we come to county council. At this point, all the bills are paid. Things seem to be going, very, very well over there right now, and we have people coming in census-wise. And you will see in your audit report, your external audit report, come what may, and then, we have the 2025 budget, which I think will show Gracedale having a rather healthy fund balance in the end, when all is said and done at the end of 2025. Simply because we've over-budgeted expenses.
So I guess, but despite all the discussion that's been the previous discussion, mine is specific in that Gracedale, so in the general fund, whatever money, whether it's a gift or whether more money came in the IGT than we thought would, and it goes into the general fund, there is a specific fund or line item or bucket that any of that money goes into for Gracedale. And if that bucket is taken, any of that money is taken out of that bucket, because it hasn't gone to Gracedale yet, any of that money that's in that bucket is taken for something other than Gracedale, would that have to be approved by council?
Oh yeah, it's actually also the only time this has come into effect, Mr. Heckman, is with the ARP money and the resolutions that council passed and that ARP money. And I can tell you, every dollar that council had put in a resolution ARP wise went to Gracedale. It's all there now. Part of it being closed out. And that $8 million I speak of that we over budgeted in expenses for this year for the IGT, that's over at Gracedale now. That's going to stay there. And as a matter of fact, it's pretty important that it stay there, especially with the increased census and the delay that we get in reimbursements from, even sometimes people who are self-pay at Gracedale for that short period of time until they exhaust all their assets.
So if for some reason a miracle happened and the IGT came in and it was more money than you needed to pay the bills at this time, it would go into the general fund, correct?
No, it all goes to Gracedale. The IGT is an exclusive Gracedale element. So like I said, I put.
You hold the money, you have to hold the money. I mean, where are you holding the money that comes in if it's more than you thought?
There is a portion of the CRIM account that is segregated out to Gracedale specifically for the
Okay.
IGT money. And again, the expenses are sitting in the Gracedale accounts right now. And that's where I say I have that extra $8 million. I can't touch it. I can't take it anywhere else to spend on anything else. If that
All right.
answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to be clear because of the new ordinance. Well, I shouldn't say new, but for me it was new. New ordinance that monies that would be for Gracedale, but and I agree that you had to put in the general fund or wait in the general fund. That they're all accounted for in the general fund as monies for Gracedale.
Correct, and not to complicate this any further, but you'll also know, Mr. Heckman, that when we pitch our capital improvement plan, Gracedale has its own capital improvement line items that we don't consider part
Right.
of the Gracedale corpus, right? We don't consider it part of the entire Gracedale budget because it can be amortized, it can be depreciated depending on the situation. Yes, we put maintenance and stuff like that into Gracedale for non-capital items, like if, you know, a door gets broken, we got to fix a door, right? We have to keep the home up to compliance with all of the mechanical and stuff like that that goes on. But if we're going to make a big capital improvement, like putting a new roof on or something like that, that would then not be part of Gracedale's budget. It's an asset to Gracedale, but we haven't put it in Gracedale's budget. We keep it as a capital item that council approves separately.
Yeah, yes. I'm reading that ordinance that was passed. I think it primarily was focused on the fact that in the past, they got more money and it did plug holes in other areas of the county, but that the money, if they got more money than they needed, that it would stay focused on care, primarily care, and Gracedale would be the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, it's
but,
all.
But you've got it accounted for.
Yeah, it's also part of the reason we pulled the daycare out of Gracedale. While it's a Gracedale asset, it's going to be housed at Gracedale. We believe there are probably going to be other county employees after Gracedale employees that utilize it. So it's really an HR benefit, and that's why it resides in HR. We had that internal discussion, and we felt it best be put there.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome.
See if anybody have any questions up to anybody else? For the ARPA money that went to capital projects at Gracedale, that's not residing in the Gracedale budget, that's residing in the Gracedale capital, which you just said is outside their budget. Then what happens to that money?
So it depends on what specifically the project was. So there was money early on in ARP that went directly to Gracedale, and some of that was capital. So for like the negative airflow unit and whatever, while that was actually run through Gracedale before that like philosophical change, right? So any ARP money that went specifically to Gracedale came into Gracedale, even if it was used for capital and used for that. Much of Gracedale's larger capital items, when you look at the capital budget that council passed last year, you will see that listed. It'll be a separate Gracedale campus item. And sometimes an expense for Gracedale, like the roof or whatever, if there's a roof that needs to be fixed. While it has the Gracedale campus, sometimes it is actually the building of Gracedale. And if we're mobilizing somebody to fix like the Greystone roof and we have to get something fixed at Gracedale, it just makes sense to keep it all in that one capital campus line item, and it doesn't affect Gracedale.
But but what I'm hearing you say, that is not covered by the ordinance of what goes to Gracedale stays at Gracedale.
I mean, no. I mean, because it is technically a depreciable asset, so we've traditionally tried to keep that
That's
as
okay,
a separate.
yeah, just understand if we approve ARPA money to go to capital for Gracedale, it's not bound by the same ordinance as the other monies that we're talking about technically.
But technically, but then council would have the ability, and like they do with the capital plan, council then has the ability, when we make movements throughout different campuses or whatever in the capital plan, those are presented for budget amendments and the like, when they happen.
The 2 million, I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 2 million that went to renovate the space at Gracedale for the daycare,
That was actually in Gracedale's budget.
that was in Gracedale's money.
Yes, yeah, that was in Gracedale's budget.
Gracedale's money.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, with the $3 million movement and all the other stuff that went in, it's hard to determine, like, what exactly that movement was for, because it doesn't always correlate to an exact expense, because the daycare was obviously built, finished, and then we got the last of the bills, right? So we had to determine when we paid that bill, the situation. But that money for the daycare was residing in Gracedale, including, I think there was like either $800,000 or $1 million left. That then, with the budget process this year, we took from Gracedale with council's approval and put into the HR budget. And the reason we did that was what I stated to Mr. Heckman just a second ago.
Okay, so I'll wrap up my comments then as follows. One, you mentioned that if ARPA money went to Gracedale, it stayed in there. But the question this body has is about, was the money that we committed, was it used in the way that we asked and approved the money to be used? That goes to the, Mr. Goffredo, your point about the retention bonuses and so on and so forth, which we have the controller taken a look at. That's a big concern. I will push back on Mr. Barron's comments. 450, I think was 454, I think was the last report from about the census count at Gracedale. That includes some rehab beds in there. While I applaud that they are improving, I don't think that's great. When you have 688 licensed beds there, that facility has not seen the light of day in years. So I will push back on that, especially when 80% of the nursing employee base is outside contractors. We're not even maintaining our contractors there.
Just
Ms.
wanted-
Wondolowski, yes.
Yes. Just wanted to update the census this morning is over 490. I forget if it's 492, 495, but we are quickly creeping back to that 500, and so once we're there, we'll keep on going. So I just wanted to update you on that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's still 200 beds less than what we should be doing, and it's been years since we've got there. And congratulations in the last year of movement. We've seen a lot of movement in the last year with that. The other concern I have is, as Mr. Barron said, there was a large chunk of money from ARPA that went in. That money was used to cover the operating losses for Gracedale. I think it was $15 million was moved in at one point. When in 2023, they had an operating loss of $27.8 million audited in the books. We're looking at an $8.5 million operating loss potentially at the end of 2024. When you put all this together and then you back out the ARPA funds that have been supplementing the operations at Gracedale, there's a significant financial concern I have going forward, how we're going to be able to continue to fund this without changing the way we're going about doing this overall. As Mr. Barron said,
Continue to fund.
census going up, there's more overhead costs associated with each bed. I think I forget the study, but each bed, basically, we feel we lose money, technically, at the end of the day. Mr. Warren?
When you say continue to fund this, do you mean continue to fund Gracedale?
Gracedale, yes.
Gracedale in general?
Correct,
Okay,
overall,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as a continuing operation, we still have to find a way to fund it, to keep it
Oh, yeah, I know.
operating. And if you go back the last several years, total up the operating losses that have occurred, thank God for the extra money that came in, because it helped cover. But even at going into 2024, Mr. Barron said they'll end up in the positive at the end of 2025. we'll wait and see what that looks like. The other concern I have is the fact that in 2023, as I said, there was $3.7 million moved into Gracedale used to balance it that I don't know where it came from and who authorized it. Neither did Mr. Barron. The $8.5 million, Mr. Barron is saying, hey, let's wait and see, let's wait and see, let's wait and see. That seems to be a problem for me. Why? If somebody authorized that number to be put onto this form, to be put into this statement, this is a financial statement published by the Finance Department. So I think there are serious concerns, and I will be talking to my colleagues. I think whatever we have the controller doing, there's more work that needs to be done. The other concern I have is this is such an important asset for the county. I think collectively that's an accurate statement I think everyone would agree with. And yet nowhere in the controller's annual report do I see that the controller is targeting this particular facility for audits. You would think they would want to be on top of this. They'd want to be looking at this. It's almost 20, I forget the number. The budget was 115 over, what, 530 million? You do the math, it's approximately 20% of the entire budget. You would think there'd be more focus on it from the controller's office going forward. Just to make sure, as Mr. Barron said, these are complicated transactions that take place. That's where we should be spending our time to make sure the dollars are going where they are. I'll stop at that point because I'll take a step back from there. Questions, comments before we move on? No? Okay. Anything else for the committee? If not, then I'll go ahead, Mr. Goffredo.
I don't know if this is coming up on tomorrow night's agenda, but there was an email sent out that we've made, or at least the administration has made recommendations for the parking garage. Since this being the Finance Committee, I feel like it's pertinent information. The administration has selected Skanska for the construction manager and THA for the architects. The only information I'd like to share with the council is that both of these bidders were the high bidders of the three that we finalized. I listened to all the architectural interviews, and I sat through the construction managers. I don't think there was a bad organization in the group, but I do think that we would be wise as a council to look at possibly going with the lower, or at least, I believe me and Mr. Emili both concurred with who our top picks were, being Boyle and ONS. ONS was the architectural engineering firm, and they were the low, and Boyle was the second to lowest on construction manager. And that will save us close to $250,000 right there in the beginning of the project. I don't know when this is coming up on the agenda, if it's going to be tomorrow or the next May meeting. It's May meeting, correct? So we have time to talk about it and think about it. I just wanted to put it in your ears. If you guys have any questions, we could talk about it as well.
I have an answer if you want one.
Sure.
So I asked that the contracts be pulled from the council agenda. I did so because I had the scoring sheet in front of me. And the group itself, I know you talked about you and Mike being in agreement, but the group had chosen THA by points. And Boyle and Skanska were tied by points in the review process. So my thinking is that the committee needs to, at a minimum, go back to the drawing board and see if you can come up with a consensus pick for both A&E and construction management that I can bring to council. If not, I'm going to reject the bids. I would, and start over.
With new bids?
Yes.
Why would we resort to that?
Well, because we went through a process. We had the point system. The point system chose THA and Skanska and Boyle were tied. I chose to put forward Skanska. You sent your email. And, one of the things that's troubling to me is, I guess you revealed during the meetings that your company has some business relationship in the past with Boyle. I'm not sure that
I think I've had business relationships with everybody on the sheet.
then maybe you shouldn't be evaluating them. Maybe
Why
you
would
should
that disqualify me? Wouldn't that
maybe
make
you
me
should
an
recuse
expert
yourself
in
from
the-
that.
I would disagree. I would say I'm going to recuse myself from bidding on the project, because that would be in bad taste. But my information is perfectly valid.
Well, you're,
I'm-
I'm not,
me
que-
and
I'm
Mr.
not,
Amelia
I'm
were
not,
the only
que-
ones
I'm
there
not,
that knew what
I'm
they were
not,
talking about.
I'm not questioning your expertise for purposes
What are you
of-
questioning then? My
for-
integrity?
For purposes of this conversation, but if you have business relationships
With everybody in the
people that
valley.
you are advocating that we hire, you might want to recuse yourself from that discussion.
I want to save the county money.
No,
I would like to
I
ask why you want the highest bidder.
what?
Do you have a financial interest in this,
What?
Mr. McClure?
No, I do not have
Then
a
why would we
financial.
go with the highest
I,
bidders?
unlike you, didn't do business with companies you were reviewing. You should have disclosed that and recused yourself. Anyway, I've suggested what it is we should do. You're welcome.
Anything else before we adjourn? No. No? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.